Morning, everyone. Hello. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to give a couple of seconds to allow people to kind of come in and connect to the audio, and then we'll start. I'm going to let you join all first. Okay, numbers still going up a little bit, but I'll just start with the intro. So good morning or good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're dialing in from. Thank you for joining us today for this info session on our MBA co-curriculum. I'm joined here today by two colleagues, Amy Major and Lucy Street, who will talk you today through all of the exciting co-curricular opportunities we have here at the business school. Just a bit of housekeeping, there is a Q&A function in this webinar, so we'll leave a little bit of time towards the end for any questions that you might have, or even throughout. Just pop them in the Q&A box and we'll get to them either throughout the presentation or right at the end. So any questions, please put them there. I think we'll probably start fairly on time, just so we will have some time to go through your questions. And yeah, I'm going to hand over to Amy now. Thank you.
Thank you, Francie, for the introduction. And thank you everyone for joining us, whether you're listening in live or you're going to pick up on this as a recording thereafter. Francie, if we could move to the next slide, that'd be great. Thank you. So yeah, as Francie said, I'm Amy Major, a very long job title of Co-curriculum and Student Engagement Manager. I'll bring that down to kind of a real kind of basic level of what does that mean. So our team, which also includes Lucy, who you're going to meet shortly, and an events manager as well. We really focus, so we're in the MBA programs team, and we sit alongside the academic delivery team. And we essentially work very closely with the MBA cohort throughout the year. We work with the student council, we work with all student groups, we run the funding process for you guys to attend conferences and competitions. We are very close, along with the academic delivery team, in planning your MBA launch. When you then finish your program, we arrange your capstone end of week ceremony and all of those good things. The MBATs, the MBA ball, just really think about anything that is not your academics, but isn't specific to some of the centres, such as Finance Lab or the Skull Centre or Entrepreneurship Centre. So really anything that really sort of encapsulates your experience outside of the classroom and your academics is where me and Lucy really sort of come into your experience. So yeah, we have a really sort of close working relationship with quite a large number of the students. So sadly or not sadly, you will, if you're joining us in September, be getting to see lots more of us. And I've just this morning come from a 1.5 hour meeting all about launch, which we're making a lot of progress with, and getting really excited to see everybody coming in on the 19th of September. I, just to give a little bit of potted history, have been with Saeed 6 years, and until last year I was within recruitment and admissions. So all of the great colleagues I'm sure you have interacted with through the admissions process, that's where I used to sit. So I understand the stage of the process that you're in now, and the fact that you are, you know, transitioning through this sort of onboarding process and really sort of like starting to plan your year a bit more. And what we're going to try and do this morning is give you a bit of a flavour of some of the things that you might want to be sort of thinking of and considering, you know, as we move throughout July and August and into September, and this really sort of starts to become a reality. But with that, I'll just hand over to Lucy, who will also introduce herself and give you a bit of a sense of what she works on a little bit more closely with you. So thanks, Lucy.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. My name's Lucy Street, and I'm the Student Experience Lead. I'm really here to help you navigate your co-curricular experience. So I'd have quite a lot of different touch points with you during the year, from helping you to form or manage student groups, Also, if you'd like to attend any conferences or competitions, and all those sort of co-curricular activities that supporting with all the co-curricular activities that Amy mentioned, the student council, and different things like that. So yeah, I'll probably be speaking to you all quite a lot this year. There's been so much going on this year, and I'm really excited to in this presentation to tell you of all the things that people have done last year, so that we can recreate and innovate for this year and make it even better. So you can get the most out of your co-curricular experience. Just as a bit of background, I also worked on the teaching side of the MBA for a period of time. So yeah, I'm quite aware of everything that goes on in the program, and yeah, always here to help. So please do contact me during the year if you have any queries or questions, and yeah, we can help you.
I think Lucy makes a really good point there, just that I'd like to pick up on, which is innovation and how busy this year has been. And I think, you know, unless anybody has been hiding under some rock for the last, you know, 2.5 years, it's been an odd and difficult time for many. And so I think what we've seen is that there's much that happens in a co-curriculum space, that in the MBA, really the wheels were, I use this phrase of sort of, it was very much sort of just a business as usual, and keeping those things alive, because students could not take part in things like MBATs, have an MBA ball, you know, really exploit and, you know, make the most of sort of a student council or OBN or group experience during, you know, the last couple of years. And so there's much that the groups have done this year that is really sort of like, when they were planning their year, they were often looking back to sort of, you know, the cohorts of maybe 2018, 2019, 2017, 2018, to see like what had been done before. And like even this Sunday, the Entrepreneurship OBN are running a big pitch event. I'm just using this as an example, and that event had not taken place since sort of like 3 cohorts ago, you know. So what we do have the massive opportunity now is that the 21-22 cohort that is currently still with us, there's a great footprint of things to hand over and information. And there's also, as we'll move throughout this presentation, what you'll see is there is a lot that's changing. So there's a lot that we are working on right now and imminently looking to sort of slightly tweak and slightly shift and slightly improve, that just hasn't been done for a couple of years, because it was sort of a, you know, a standstill situation. And hopefully you'll see that as we sort of move throughout this session. So Francie, could you move to the next slide, please? Okay, so I'm sure many of you will have heard about the Student Council. The Student Council is a group of individuals that work really closely with the administration of the business school. You can see most of them here visiting the House of Lords. They went for a visit to see Lord Villamoria, who is the chief of the CBI in the UK and also a member of the House of Lords. He had visited campus during MBA launch last September, and the Student Council took the opportunity to go on a visit to the House of Lords in London. So you can see them all very smartly dressed here on the steps of Lords there. So yeah, we work really, really closely with the Student Council. On the MBA portal, which you'll shortly be getting access to, we do realise there is some access issues which we will touch on at the end of this presentation. You'll be able to see more information about the Student Council. We actually are meeting with the Student Council on Monday to start our conversations around how we hand over to next year's cohort, being your group. And also how we think about anything that we might want to just sort of shift or tweak at all in terms of the roles, the responsibilities, the job titles that really sort of come with these positions. And so what our aim will be is that by probably the middle of July, we will share all of the full details for the Student Council for your year. I'm going to come on to the process in a couple of slides' time about how you look to become part of the Student Council. But for now, I'll just touch on a couple of these positions, and just to start to give you a sense of the kind of responsibility. So the two co-presidents, we definitely will have two co-presidents next year, I'm absolutely sure of it. It's quite a big responsibility. I would not recommend anybody to take up a co-president role and to then be a co-chair of an OBN. You might want to also consider whether you'd want to be sort of co-president and then also be involved in something as intense as maybe like Finance Lab or Impact Lab. So, you know, being maybe co-president is something that, you know, you will need to really sort of give your full self to throughout the year. You know, we are in contact with these people on a weekly basis. We have meetings like very, very regularly. And we're often, you know, there's quite a lot of emails, you know, in between in terms of, you know, actions that we're working on, items that we're sort of trying to progress. So Mary Zhukovskaya and Mishan Chetty are the current co-presidents. What you will see on the portal when you get access is a full detailed list of all of the current student councils. So if anybody wants to like reach out to those people, ask them about the year, their role, how it's been, then you can absolutely do that. Other roles that I would say probably carry, you know, quite a bit of responsibility would be the finance officer. So that person, we have a student life budget, we call it, every year. And that is really like a responsible role for ensuring that funds are spent appropriately, that things are really kept track of. And we really look to sort of like work quite closely with that person to make sure that we keep that on track. The academic affairs officer, again, is a really, really in-depth role. So Mikhail Malik, who has worked with us this year, I would say there's, you know, not a few days go by where we're not in touch with Mikhail over something. And then the student life officer, this year has taken charge of both sort of steering the MBA ball and the MBATs. Now, those two things happen in very, very close succession, and we do think that possibly for next year that may take a slight shift. We do think that probably that responsibility needs to be, you know, slightly split out across a few people. So what that looks like yet, we're working on. And I think, you know, if you look at the others, I would say those are probably the ones that carry the really sort of like most intense responsibility. But you know, things like welfare, things like careers, these are also like really, really key to the experience. And so I think should not be considered without, you know, really considering what your other commitments might be, you know, as an individual. So yeah, I think before I move on to the next slide, I would just say, check out the Student Council page, check out the people that are doing those roles at the moment. Start to consider, you know, what other things you're going to be doing and what responsibilities you will have, and then we'll come on to the process of how you will nominate yourself for those roles in the next couple of slides. So, okay, so student groups, I say current groups. So this is something that I think, going back to my earlier point of innovating and things really standing still during the pandemic, you know, OBNs, clubs, alliances, you know, they worked great during that period, but weren't able to really sort of reach their full potential. And you probably sort of picked up on the fact from my history of having moved from recruitment and admissions into the programs function this last year, and Lucy also having moved from our Master in Financial and Economics course and academics to this area, that we are really sort of like new to this co-curriculum space. And what that means is that we've been able to take a really fresh pair of eyes and look at what works and what doesn't. And so right now we are just closing out, actually on Friday, a survey that has gone to the whole MBA cohort. It's also gone to our careers team who work really closely with OBNs. It's gone to our recruitment and admissions colleagues who work, you know, quite closely, well, certainly with the student body when you're incoming. And we are currently reviewing everything around OBNs and clubs, not the alliances. We aren't touching those. The reason we're not going to touch the alliances or make any shifts or changes is that they were set up several years ago, really to speak to the goals of the school. So as many of you will know, the former Dean Peter Stefano, and you know, the focus of Saeed has very much been on having a presence that is not just students, but very much around scholarships, corporate partnerships, careers relationships on the continent of Africa. And clearly, you know, everybody knows there has been a focus, you know, a big strive towards working towards gender parity, which is something where work is not done. So the alliances will very much be the same for next year. Again, as part of the portal and during the summer, you'll have the opportunity to put yourself forward and to apply to be a co-chair or committee member of one of those groups. There will be webinars taking place for both of those alliances during the summer. In fact, we are in the process, I know, of already setting a session for later in June for the Women's Alliance, and I just spoke yesterday with Tammy Brophy, who's the Africa Initiative Manager, who has one in the works as well. But when we look to the OBNs and clubs, there's some real differences here. So I'm just going to lay out a couple of details for you. So the OBNs are people put themselves forward in groups to nominate, and they're elected by their classmates during the early part of October. These groups have a set amount of funding. They receive like an OBN toolkit of how to go about everything, from like booking events to having a logo, having advertising, having a presence on our website. When we then look to clubs, there's a real lack of governance, and this makes not only your lives as students difficult, but it makes it trickier for, you know, Lucy and I, and we're all, you know, you're going to have a very busy year. And we're also really, really busy people. So we think the club space is somewhere where we can really innovate and create some parity between how we treat student groups. So our survey that we're conducting at the moment is by no way, we are not trying to influence the outcome of that, but certainly what we are looking to move towards is a more formalized process for clubs. Because currently these self-form, so that naturally gives way to people coming together with, you know, potentially friends, people they sort of get to know throughout probably Michaelmas, and just setting up a club, which means that other people who might have been interested might be precluded from that. It means there isn't a fair process of them forming, and they also have, on the back end of that, not really had the sort of like external presence of maybe having sort of like formal logos, having a formal LinkedIn presence, and being able to really sort of like use the sort of the backbone of the school as their sort of like voice to the external world, to, you know, other schools that they might, other business schools that they might be working with. So there are some real, you know, changes I think that you guys will see. So much like the student council process, by the middle of July, we will have this finalised, and our aim is that we will have a very clear list and sense of how the OBNs and clubs will operate for your year, and what will take place. So I hope that's sort of like music to everyone's ears, that it's going to be you know, clear in terms of what clubs, what OBNs are available. And obviously we will open up the conversation to, well, could clubs form that don't already exist? Well, that's definitely something we need to consider. Could there be somebody in this cohort that has an idea about a club, and could it be formed, you know, during those first few weeks, even though it isn't maybe listed? So that will be something that I know might be a question on people's minds. And you'll see in italics there, we've also trialed two regional groups this year, with the naming convention you see there. So we're just sort of figuring out off the back of the survey how that is going to work as well. Oh, really good question, and I'm sure we're all guilty of this. OBNs, it means Oxford Business Network. Okay, so really good question there. Sorry for putting in an Oxford acronym. We will have you down pat with all of our acronyms by the end of launch, I'm sure of it. But yeah, I hope that if there's any questions as we move to the Q&A at the end around this, then please do let us know, and more than happy to answer them. So, and another question there, which I'll just answer whilst we're on the slide, what's the difference between an alliance and an OBN? So I think really back to my earlier point, They're very similar. They both receive the same amount of funding. I think the alliances really do speak to the sort of school initiatives. So if any of you are from the African continent or interested in Africa, you might have heard of Tammy, who I mentioned before. There is a very much fully fledged initiative around Africa at the school, and how that develops and shifts and changes with Sumitra Dutta as the new dean coming in, then who knows? I think we're definitely sort of firmly firmly fixed in our focus on Africa, and certainly hope to see that continue. And with, I think, the Women's Leadership Alliance, it obviously speaks to gender parity and diversity and inclusion, so works really closely with a lot of wider school initiatives. And the Oxford Business Networks naturally have always spoken to the focuses of our careers team, I would say, for the large part. Also work really closely with a lot of the co-curricular centres. But you'll also see that we had the creation of the India OBN last year. And I think, in the interest of being candid, I can say that definitely brought some questions for some people as to, well, can there be a club or group for every country? Why can there be one for India and not for others? And certainly that did pave way for the creation of the LATAM and the wider Asia group. So I think next year there's definitely a conversation to be had with the current OBN, with the current Asia group, as to, does that need to be a wider Asia initiative? Does that need to be sort of like a East Asia and a South Asia initiative? Like, what does that look like? But that's something that we're working on right now. And I think something I would always say is that Lucy and I are always working really closely with the student body and getting the student voice. So we won't just like change things or create things without really sort of like taking into account what the students actually think. So just wanted to mention that. So moving on to the next slide, which I think speaks to the next question that we've had just pop up. So, okay, so the application process. So the application process is something that we're also reviewing as part of this survey. So, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, you want to obviously review during the summer what you think you might want to be part of. So I'm going to briefly give you a sense of how that takes place. So during launch, you would naturally nominate yourself for an OBN or for the student council. As I've mentioned, the clubs have typically self-formed. However, I would not be surprised if we do change that, because as I've mentioned, it doesn't feel quite the fairest way for things to take place. So that is something that I think the outcome of this, we've already seen some of the initial data, and it definitely seems to be lending towards everybody feeling that this should be a fair process for all, with no bias involved. And without an election, then that slips in. So quite typically, you'd have the nomination process during launch. That would then lead to pitching, which usually happens in the Nelson Mandela Lecture Theatre, and it gets really excitable, and a lot of the cohort will attend, where you'll get to see your fellow classmates pitch for these positions. And we will then hold several days where elections are open, and you can then vote for the student council and the OBNs, and then quite simply the teams are formed and then they get working. So typically by the sort of second week of your academics having got started, so we're sort of maybe talking around the kind of 10th of October, the teams will be formed and they'll get working. And we really want to give you upfront information about these from really sort of full detail information, as I've mentioned, from July. So you've got lots of time to think about it, so that you can be reaching out to us at that point with questions about, okay, well, I got a spot on, someone might say, well, I've got a spot on finance lab. I'm also thinking of going for this OBN chair role, and could I be academic officer? And we can have a chat with you and liaise over whether that might be a good idea or not. And yeah, so I would just really urge you to use the summer to really sort of consider you know, all of those commitments. As I've said, from the middle of July, you'll be able to see the exact dates by which you'll need to put yourself forward. On the MBA portal is a preparation requirements kind of page where you'll be able to see all the deadlines for all of these things. So you'll be able to keep track of when you need to be, you know, putting yourself forward, and myself and Lucy will be involved in, certainly the first day of launch, we'll be reminding you of all of these things. So if your head is already thinking, how am I going to keep track of all this stuff, we're going to be constantly, you know, communicating with you. And during the summer, as of the middle of July, you'll start to receive what are called countdown newsletters, countdown announcements, where we'll be also reminding you of like all the next things that you need to do. And I'm sure all of your fellow incoming students will also be reminding you over Slack as well. So yeah, lots of communications coming to make sure that you can, you know, take part. Okay, good question here. So these discussions are just relating to officer positions and not being a member. Yeah, okay, so I'm talking about becoming a committee member of these groups or student council OBNs, let's say groups, just for purpose of ease during the session. So yeah, absolutely, you'll then look to become a member of these OBNs, or clubs or groups or alliances as well, and you'll be able to sign up to become members of those. The student council obviously like serves the whole cohort, so there's nothing that you need to do to become, you know, privy to what the student council does. I hope that's helpful. I think with that, I'm going to move on back to Lucy, and she's going to speak to conferences and competitions, of which there has been lots going on this year. So
Hi there. Yes, it has been a really exciting year. So a lot of conferences and competitions that weren't able to run over the last couple of years have either been able to take place, or instead of being online, they've actually been able to happen in person. So that's been really great to see, and the students have really kind of, you know, taken advantage of that. I think, as Amy mentioned, like there's been lots of participation and lots of enthusiasm and excitement about it. As a school, we really support students attending competitions and conferences, so we actually have a budget to help support you to either, you know, for competition entry or travel, and the same with conferences to pay to attend. So what we would do is we have kind of an application process. So you'd apply. There is only a certain amount of money there, so it's a first come first serve basis. We review the application, and then we tell you how much we're able to support with that. But we will give you more detail about that on the portal in the coming weeks. Just to focus on competitions. So two of the main competitions that we support is the Global VCIC. That's one of the world's largest venture capital competition, with over 120 universities and graduate school teams competing. We also have teams entering Mint. So as a team, students engage in sourcing and conducting due diligence on real-world, early-stage impact investment opportunities with the support of the Tournament online curriculum. So in addition to these two competitions, there are various case competitions run by prestigious universities, banks, and companies. What my aim is to put a list on the portal of the ones that have been students have attended this year, so that you can see, look ahead at registration, whether you'd be interested in attending. We also have some SBS competitions. So we've got the Hermes, the Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and the Oxford Private Equity Challenge. These are linked to Finance Lab. And so it would be people who are part of the Finance Lab that could attend. But please do start thinking now about competitions that you might want to enter. You know, you can speak when you're linking in. The competitions always link well with the Oxford Business Networks as well. So there are ones that are key to these particular networks that when we do the handover, they can tell you a little bit more information about them as well. We also get people to write a summary of the competition afterwards. So I'll be collating some information from this year so that you can really kind of make the most of the competitions this year, and we can build on what we did this year for the coming year. Could we please change the slide to the next one? Thank you. Just to give a shout out this year to the achievements, which has been amazing. We've had lots of winning teams. We won the Hermes GP Private Markets Challenge, the Bank of America Case Competition, the Rothschild Global Advisory Challenge, the Prime Times Pathway Challenge, and the LBS Impactathon. And just to say that not all the competitions that we've won, that is just a selection of them. We also had some student winners, one of the Yale Global Stock Trading Competition and Battle of the Green. We had lots of finalists as well for different competitions, including the UCLA MBA Paramount Media and Entertainment Competition and VCIC. And we had a student final place at the Kellogg Morgan Stanley Sustainable Investing Challenge. So yeah, as you can see, we did amazing this year, and this isn't everything that, you know, all the wins, it's just a selection. So yeah, as I said, we would really like to pass on information from how these competitions went this year to you. So we'll be looking at doing that in the next couple of months. Okay, could we move on to the next slide, please? Yeah, this is just a bit about the conferences. So just to say, again, you can apply throughout the MBA year for funding. You just choose a conference which complements your studies or business interests. So examples of these have been Viva Tech, the world's rendezvous for startups and leaders to celebrate innovation. Another example is Slush, the world's leading startup event, or the World Economic Forum. It really, as I said, it is to complement your studies and your business interests. So the competitions and conferences that we enter and attend and support will change year on year, depending on what your focus is. So we really want to kind of like help you individually, not just recreate what we did last year. I've been getting feedback from the conferences. I was just reading through some of it today, and I was just read through that one of our MBAs entered a blockchain conference, and they were just saying like how great it was to be able to network not just for themselves but also for the school. So it was helping kind of like with the business network. And they actually said that a meeting that they had there, which they had conversations with the person previously, but actually resulted in a job offer. So that was you know, really great. And I guess it's just these co-curricular aspects are great ways to build on the teaching that you have, networking and looking forward to the future. So I think it's over to you now, Amy, is that right?
Yeah, I think just to, you know, echo that, I think, you know, to Lucy's comments, like this is also something to like, you know, really consider and get sort of like organized with, and think about, you know, where your interests lie and what you might want to do. You know, the funding, I think is, you know, I've spoke with, you know, some of our, you know, competitor schools, certainly sort of not so much globally, but sort of like here in the UK, and the support that we give for people to attend these kind of things, I think is actually really quite generous. So, you know, for most of these conferences or competitions, you're looking at support in the region of like 250 to, you know, £400. You know, and we're allowing you to get support for one conference and one competition in the year. So you want to like use that funding, you know, really wisely. You don't want to use sort of your, you know, your conference funding on a conference that's costing £25 if there's something like, you know, the WEF, the World Economic Forum, or like Viva Tech that's taking place in a couple of weeks in Paris, you know, that's going to involve like travel costs and accommodation and things. So, but, you know, Lucy works really closely with the students, you know, on that. And again, we'll be like sharing all of the detailed, you know, policy for next year. We have a policy in place and all the process in place, but again, we're sort of just taking the summer. Once the current cohort sort of like depart for all of their summer activity in a couple of weeks' time, we're then just going to like look back at the policy, what we've done this year, and check that we have that exactly how we want that for next year for all of you. So again, within the MBA portal and all of the countdown newsletters, you'll be receiving all that kind of information, and obviously you'll be able to, you know, ask us directly any specific questions. So yes, moving on to the next slide, I think. So yeah, so I think really just wanted to use a little bit of time to just, you know, I guess give you a sense of it of a few things that happen outside of the classroom, so to speak. So outside of sort of like the formal academic, what is class for your degree, that, you know, you're going to want to be part of, need to be part of, to really sort of get that immersive Oxford experience, and things that our team are really sort of closely involved in. So once you get access to the MBA portal, you'll be able to see a sort of like very brief overview of launch. So launch is going to take place from the 19th of September till the 30th of September. It's an action-packed 2 weeks. You might want to deem it kind of like orientation, introduction. We call it MBA launch. It's going to be in person, on campus. It's going to be full of keynote speakers, lots of time with the Career Development Centre. It's going to have sessions that get you sort of really match fit for academic writing, for, you know, if you're sat there thinking, I have not written an essay for 5 years, I have no idea where to start, then we're going to have those kind of sessions. We're going to have sessions that navigate you around case study skills. We're going to have some events that go out into the wider university. So we're going to take you to the Sheldonian Theatre and, you know, speak to you about how, you know, really the history of Oxford speaks to why leadership is how it is in Oxford. We're going to take you to college dinners. We're going to have a barbecue. We're going to have drinks at the Natural History Museum and amongst the dinosaurs. We're going to have some sessions that really focus around diversity and inclusion. So really getting you to think about your own self, how you behave around others, how you all culturally come together. How do you work in a group? You know, you're going to be working in study groups, in often small groups where people might have different values, different ethics, different beliefs, different ways of working, and you're all going to need to come together. So yeah, launch is going to be it's going to be really good. There's lots happening at the moment. I would say we are kind of really getting there with the schedule, and we have 2 of the keynote speakers already secured. I'm not going to share who they are for now, but yeah, it's going to be a really exciting time. There's going to be times where it's going to feel, you know, really intense because there's going to be lots of you in one space, and then there's going to be times where you're going to be in smaller groups as well. But it's really going to be the opportunity to also meet your study sections, meet your study groups, and really just ingrain yourself, you know, in the world of Said. Albeit we will have some events that will take place outside of the 4 walls of Said, where I'm sat right now. Moving on to Oxford Insights. So I mentioned taking you to the Sheldonian. So we had some, you know, we've had kind of gathering feedback over the last couple of years that some students just really don't get to sort of like explore you know, that sort of wider Oxford context, and why do we have this sort of like business school in this, you know, 800-year-old university? So during launch, we're going to take you to the Sheldonian. You're going to hear from Professor William White, who is the most eminent professor of architecture in Oxford. He's also extremely close to, I don't know if anybody's been following the new development of the new Humanities and AI Schwarzman Centre in Oxford. He's actually one of the key designers of that. There is nothing that he does not know about a building in Oxford and how it might speak to the sort of the style of leadership that we have within the university. And then we're going to move throughout the year, and hopefully this is all in the planning at the moment. If anybody's followed Instagram, you might have seen some of our students sat within the Oxford Philharmonic Orchestra. We took some students just a couple of weeks ago to see one of the best, Sabrina Terfel, who's one of the, you know, most famous sort of opera singers in the world. So we're going to have some real kind of wider Oxford experiences. They won't be compulsory. Not everybody has to attend, but they're going to give people who want that opportunity to really sort of explore wider Oxford the chance to really sort of like do that. Moving on to matriculation, this is your formal ceremony that will make you an official student of Oxford. It will happen in October. We will confirm the date, and it is mandatory. So attending matriculation and becoming a formal student as part of the University of Oxford is a really important thing to do, and it is mandatory. So if you are somebody that is maybe heading off to a wedding in October, or potentially planning to, or thinking about suddenly doing a trip somewhere around Europe in the first 2 weeks of October, you might want to just check in on those dates, certainly throughout the summer, or check in with us, you know, shortly, because yeah, we would need to just navigate that with you. Other things that are going to happen is you're going to hear from speakers, not only in launch, but throughout the year. You're going to get invited to a lot of speaker events that are going to take place in Said. And also, I'm skipping on to a later point, but you're going to become a lifelong member of the Oxford Union, okay? And so I would say you're going to have a very intense year with all of your studies here and everything that's going to go on from a co-curriculum perspective in the business school. But alongside that, you're going to have this membership to the Oxford Union. I, as a member of staff, do not have a membership to the Oxford Union, and wish I did. There is an enviable list of speakers and visitors and debates that go on throughout the year. So if there is one thing that you do alongside maybe attending college dinners in your college, is attend some talks at the Oxford Union, you will literally get to see people speak that you probably would never get to see, you know, outside of this opportunity. So I would really urge you to sort of really, you know, take the maximum opportunity to attend the Oxford Union. And within the Student Council, we also have a student union officer, so somebody who is that like liaison between MBAs and the student union. So yeah, that's something that somebody who is really into like debates or speakers might want to consider as a role. The other thing that's going to go on in the year is we're going to recognise the community and your cultures and things that you really want to do. So this year, again, I think to this sort of like earlier point of like, these things didn't happen for 2 years. We have had some amazing celebrations of things like Diwali, Eid, Lunar New Year, Halloween. Obviously, if you're in the UK, you'll know we had the Jubilee last week, the Queen's Jubilee. And also just our sort of catering and dining staff are amazing at recognising all of these events. So there's always lots of treats and food and refreshments that are sort of speaking to all of these different things that go on throughout the year. And a lot of this is fostered through the student community. So it's students, it's MBAs who really look to arrange, you know, these kind of events. And if you follow Oxford SBS on social media, I'm sure you will have seen lots of these taking place. And I think even though we were sort of like in that sort of Omicron sort of peak of COVID around quite a lot of the winter, you know, the students were still really creative as to sort of like what they could do. So there's a really good footprint from the cohort that is still with us, and we'll pass on to you guys to really sort of like, I think, just replicate some of that stuff. I think you'll agree, Lucy, there's been some really sort of amazing, you know, just sense of community events. Really good way as well to sort of learn about other cultures that you just maybe don't understand or haven't come across as well. So I'd really encourage you to get involved with that. I've mentioned the Oxford Union, and then finally Capstone, which I'm really not going to go into too much detail about because you are far away from Capstone. But Capstone, sometimes people say, well, what's Capstone? It's a great Oxford acronym to the question about OBNs earlier. Capstone is the last week of your degree, which takes place in September. It takes place week commencing the 4th of September for your group. And it will consist of college dinners, the cohort really coming together after the summer. So in the summer, you'll either take electives, or you'll do a strategic consulting project, or you'll be on internship. And then most of the cohort will come together for Capstone in September. You'll bring your family, your friends to Oxford. We will have your end of course ceremony for your degree, which is, we sometimes call it your fake ceremony, because your actual graduation from Oxford will take place, so your formal like passing and qualifying from the university will take place from your college, and those usually take place in the months after you finish. But we will have an end of course ceremony where we'll award class prizes, we'll have guest speakers, and we'll have a whole week of events to sort of really you know, finish your year off. But we won't get onto your capstone because we have obviously the capstone of the current cohort to come in just a couple of months time. And in fact, we also have a very unique situation this year in that we have the capstone of the 1920 cohort, which did not receive their capstone due to the pandemic. So yeah, we have a really busy summer ahead of working with those different cohorts and welcoming you all as of the 19th of September. So hopefully that gives you a flavour of some of lots of really exciting things to come. So we can move to the next slide, Franzi, that'd be great. Okay, so the MBA portal. So I am here to tell you, obviously, if you have realised that you received 3 emails on Monday, and there has been what I can only describe as a major technical glitch with the access to the portal. As soon as I finish this session with you, I'm going to go back to my rather hectic inbox to hopefully receive an update from the IT department. We have tested and retested this access, and it should be working by later today. At the very worst case, this will be working as of tomorrow. We will provide an update to the whole cohort to let you know once you can gain access. Once you gain access to the portal, this is where you are going to find lots of information for your onboarding process. So it's where you're going to find out lots about the Career Development Centre, things that they'll be hosting throughout the next couple of months. You're going to find information about the co-curricular centres like the SCOL Centre, the Entrepreneurship Centre, Finance Lab. I know you'll have already heard from some of these groups as well. And you're going to sort of use that, this sort of top banner, I highlighted your programme in red there. And that's where you're going to start to find out lots of information about everything regarding your MBA. I want to make one really clear distinction, is that this is the MBA portal is where is what you will use throughout the year for non-academic information. You will also have access to another key system, which is called Canvas, and Canvas is where what you will use to navigate all of your academic journey. So that's where you'll be added to all of your courses and all of your electives. The MBA portal is where you will do everything from a co-curricular point of view. It's even where you'll find out things about how to book a student event, how to use the library, how to top up your cashless cards in the dining room to eat some of the great food that's being served, how to navigate things like IT services. So there's lots of information there in the portal. As we move throughout the summer, you'll be receiving announcements, there'll be a tab in here, so under your, under getting started, you'll be able to navigate preparation requirements, I think is the title, if I'm correct, Lucy. And there you'll be able to find out what you need to do. So if you're in a panic and you're thinking, what do I need to do? What have I not done? What have I not sorted out? That's where you'll be able to find this. This is separate to anything that you're doing to do with like your visa or your college. Keep that going with all of the recruitment and admissions team. This is really about the program and your program experience. And the reason I've highlighted sort of like alliances, student council, OBNs, is because that's one of the obviously key things that you might want to be thinking about as we move throughout the summer, and certainly what Lucy and I are going to be really close to working with you on. So yeah, I think that's what I would share for now. Does anybody have any questions in the minutes that we have remaining? I'll just leave a bit of time. I know we've sort of answered some as we've been going through there. Okay, perhaps I'll just use these next couple of minutes to just share, you know, if it were me right now, what would I be doing? Once you get access to this portal, I would really encourage you to start to delve into all of the careers resources. Start thinking, start planning, start really sort of like getting a sense of where you're heading. There are a lot of resources, there's a lot of information in there. That would be my absolute biggest tip. And I would keep on top of the announcements that come out from this portal throughout the summer. You're going to have our details in there, so you can reach out to us at any time. We will always come back to you. As I'm sure you can appreciate, our inboxes are incredibly busy, and we are at this sort of balance right now in June where we are still working really intensely with the current cohort. Once they move on to all of their summer plans, so they will sort of leave us for their summer plans from a co-curriculum perspective at the end of June, our minds are completely flipped onto working for your year and what's coming. But if you ever sort of like ask us something that's like very, very detailed, and we're still sort of like right now working on events with the current cohort and things, don't be alarmed if it takes us sometimes a couple of days to get back to you, but we will always give you a reply. So quick question here from the alliances. Question, will applications for the alliances commence in July? Correct, yeah. So Balawa, they will start from July, and also during the summer there will be a webinar for both the Women's Alliance and the Africa Alliance. Another question here, how does one apply to join the Oxford Seed Fund? So everything around the Oxford Seed Fund. The Oxford Seed Fund is managed by the Entrepreneurship Centre. So if you navigate in the portal to centres and labs, you'll be able to go into the Entrepreneurship Centre and you'll be able to find out lots more about the Oxford Seed Fund. I should mention all of the co-curricular centres, the key centres, will all feature as part of launch. So you'll be able to, you know, get to meet colleagues from all those various centres. You'll see them up on stage. They'll also be part of an information fair during launch as well. So you'll be able to get to meet all of those key colleagues as well. Okay. A good question here, which I think we've touched on, but perhaps we can give a bit more flavour to. In terms of participation in co-curricular, what would you consider a fair number to be part of, considering the academic workload? Perhaps I'll give a little bit of flavour, and then Lucy, you might want to sort of add to this. I would say you would not want to be a co-chair of more than one group. I think we also need to think about fairness of opportunity. in the cohort. There isn't a co-chair and leadership role for 320 students, but there are a lot of them available. And these are not things to just sort of like become part of to add to your CV. We do require you to be fully present throughout that whole academic year. There's sort of no hiding if you become a co-chair of an OBN or the leader of a club or group or the student council. So I think really, if you're doing one of the big labs, so like if you're part of Seed Creative Destruction Lab or Finance Lab or Impact Lab, something like that, you wouldn't then want to be like co-chair of another big thing. You might want to be maybe a committee member, maybe a co-chair, but I think you'd certainly want to consider your involvement in one of those key student council positions. Lucy, anything else you'd add?
Yeah, I'd say I'd agree with what you said, Amy. Just to emphasize though that actually joining these networks, you can kind of join these clubs and groups and kind of be on the mailing list for them if you're interested in seeing everything that's going on and all the co-curricular opportunities, and then you can kind of pick and choose which kind of events and information that you want, or you could kind of just reduce it down to the things that you're really interested in. So it really depends on how much you feel that you as an individual can kind of fit in as those types of activities, speaker presentations or different types of events, but as Amy said, I think the ones with the responsibilities like becoming a committee member, it's really thinking carefully about how you can not taking on too many of these roles, and so that you can actually give these roles the most, give as much as you can to these roles, so that we can kind of make the impact of them really great for you and the rest of the cohort. So it's really just spreading out those responsibilities within the cohort, really.
Yeah, and I think it's really about getting that balance right. Clearly, if there was a situation, I certainly can think of an individual this year who's had to, for reasons, has had to step away from their leadership responsibility. And clearly, if those things are happen in the right way, then that is totally fine. Things are going to happen, perhaps potentially of sort of like a welfare or health perspective, where you're going to need to make some choices throughout the year, but certainly coming into the program where you've got I'm sure you're all busy working still now and still very much with sort of like your current life and trying to get your sort of head into the space of the MBA year, but coming into it, I would just carefully consider what can you really give your full self to, and what would be too much of an ask. Also being really true to yourself. It's very easy to get just sort of like swept along. Think of your experience, think of your I've heard this phrase, your sort of North Star. What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? If you have got a huge career pivot in mind and your biggest goal is going to be hitting some of those early career those job applications that are going to come in the early part of the academic year, then focus on that. You might not be the person that wants to take up, the co-chair of the Africa Forum or being the co-president if your biggest goal is to achieve what could be a challenging career pivot. So just really think about that, and think about what you're truly interested in and what you're truly here for. I think very easy to think, you're naturally like high achieving, ambitious individuals. So it's really easy to think that you need to get involved in everything that's on offer, and you just simply will not be able to do it. You will not have the capacity. You'll end up tired and just too exhausted to enjoy this year. So hopefully that just gives you a little bit of flavour. If you can do anything over these next couple of months, think about how you'll want to spend your time and invest your energies. And as I say, myself and Lucy are here at any point if you ever want to sort of like run this past us or consider your options, and we're more than happy to assist you. So I think with that we have one more question. Okay, it's a very specific one. There is an Oxford strategy group. It is separate to sort of what MBA programs run. I would perhaps, and you're also asking about Oxford Alpha Funds, which I really don't know anything about. I'm going to be really honest. If you could send me an email, I know that question was anonymous. I've got my email address here. I definitely am aware of people that are part of Oxford Strategy Group. I do not know anything about Oxford Alpha Funds. With that, I would probably, if there's a LinkedIn group for it, I would reach out to them. That's what I would say, is you are now hopefully either, I think, people that have confirmed your spot or potentially looking to confirm your spot. You now are, in many cases, pushing at an open door. You are able to say, hi, I'm an incoming Oxford MBA. I'm keen to get involved in this. Could you help me? Could you assist me? Could you give me a few minutes of your time? Start to make those meaningful connections now. So yeah, I would definitely, Oxford Alpha Funds, I've never heard of them. I'm sure it's great. Reach out to them and see if you can get some information. And I'd certainly be, I'm sure myself and Lucy would be interested to hear more about that. We constantly unearth things that we haven't heard about before as well, and initiatives and things that are going on, and we wonder how students get involved with them, because the wider doors of Oxford beyond the business school are really extensive as well. So really always keen to hear about those and find out more. I think with that, we are going to close the session because we're just running to a minute over. I'll thank everybody for listening in. You will receive a communication about the MBA portal shortly. I can only apologise profusely for the technical situation, which is well beyond my capabilities, but we have been working incredibly closely with the IT department to rectify this as a matter of, immediacy. So look forward to meeting you on the 19th of September here on campus in person. Please do reach out to us with any questions, delve into the portal, and enjoy your summer. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lucy and Francie.